Kyle here from All Media Reviews, Albums of the Year series. Here to talk about 1970, the first year from 1970. I was going to just show quickly. So, of course, the process of trying to find all this stuff. Here's my copy of Trout Mask replica from Captain Beefheart. I knew I had it. And then I came across this the other day, my copy of Good Vibrations, the single from the Beach Boys, but what can you do, you know? Physical copies can be misplaced, and, you know, and of course I've still misplaced a lot of stuff. So, moving on to 1970, this is a pretty long list, so I'll have, you know, the collage here, of course. It's 26 albums. A lot of these I don't have physical copies, of course. I do have a fair amount, though. So number 26, King Crimson's Lizard. Not an album I've really gravitated to, but I know, of course, right after Greg Lake had left and a bunch of others left, it was Robert and was it the violinist? I'm just spacing. I just saw that documentary. Anyway, not my favorite. Number 25, local Minnesota sort of jazz fusion-y band Gypsy, their debut album, which I've always wanted to buy. I've listened to some stuff online from them. I don't have any Gypsy. They're never cheap. It's usually like $15 to $25 or $30 a pop, and they're usually used. But anyway, something that I probably could spend more time with, I'd probably like more. Number 24, Miles Davis's Bitches Brew. Let me just put this here on my lap again. You know, as I said in the last episode, in a silent way I prefer, but, you know, it still has a ton of the fusion guys, from Herbie Hancock to John McLaughlin to Chick Corea to, I want to say Lenny White also, but, and Joseph Zawinul, and anyway, it's more free jazz, it's more experimental even than Silent Way, but anyway, number 24, I never got fully into it. So number 23, I do have Jethro Tull's Benefit, an album that I really have not spent a lot of time with. They weren't really doing progressive rock. At this point, it was still kind of blues rock. They're doing a few things. There's a few tracks I really do like on this. The first three, With You There to Help Me, Nothing to Say, and Alive and Well and Living In, and then Time for Everything. I mean, it doesn't have any hits, really. Like I said, Living in the Past wasn't on here, but still, it's a decent record. You know, the record after, of course, is the one that really had them going in new places and caught on more. But anyway, number 23. Number 22, the first of a few Michael Nesmith albums. This is his first album, I believe. I mean, I'm not certain on that, but he recorded a lot of music while he was with the Monkees that didn't end up on the Monkees albums. But this is Magnetic South, the Blue album, which has Calico Girlfriend and Joanne. Joanne's his first sort of hit of sorts, if it was you want to call it a hit. Those are the most well-known tracks on here, but first national band, anyway. Got signed by the man. Number 22, number 21, I don't have them, Abraxas from Santana. Not much to say. I mean, you know, did Caravan Sarai after that. I kind of waver between those two, but I'm really more of like, I know Santana's hits, and I know I've seen him enough. Seen enough live stuff, that the jams he's done, but Abraxas is considered one of his like 2 or 3 sort of essentials. It has Black Magic Woman and Oye Como Va, so those are probably 2 of his most well-known songs. So it had to be on my list, but I don't have a copy, of course. I see it here and there, and it's one that I probably over time could feel like it would go higher on this list. But for now, it's number 21. Number 20, an album that I haven't spent a ton of time either with. I did listen to it, never bought it. George Harrison's All Things Must Pass, which has My Sweet Lord, most well-known for. It's a double, might be a triple album. Anyway, it was like Nesmith with the Monkees. Harrison, of course, had all these songs that the Beatles didn't use, need, want, whatever, and so he just was able to sort of flesh it all out and just put it all out. And a lot of people just praise this album to no end. I think it's uneven. I mean, its best moments are good, but it definitely, when I listened to it, it went on a little longer than I needed it to. Anyway, number 19, the debut album from Black Sabbath, which of course has the self-titled song, and is it Fairies Wear Boots? I mean, you know, I've got my share of Black Sabbath history. but I don't like. I have a few. I have a compilation from the Ozzy years, and I've got one other CD. The Wizard. I'm not Ferris Wear Boots. The Wizard's the one other sort of go to. You know, Black Sabbath to me were they were as much as they invented metal, heavy metal. They still were a blues rock band. I always loved when they used like harmonica and everything like that. But yeah, I mean those are kind of the Wizard, Wasp. You know, like little sweets and everything. NIB, because NIB is a track I definitely have some history with. So I don't find the Black Sabbath debut album so monumental, even though it was the heaviest thing had come around. But yeah, it's decent, but it didn't finish as higher for that reason. So number 18, Chicago 2. Don't have that. Only Chicago record I actually do have is that, which I paid 50 cents for, by the way, not $3 that I mentioned. But it's another double album, I believe, and it has 25 or 64 was the hit. But, you know, again, more time could potentially lend that to being a little higher. Number 17, Van Morrison's Moon Dance, which I was just revisiting this today, and as weird, yeah, I kind of think this is, if I had to go with one Van Morrison record, this is my go-to. It has the title track, it has, and Stone Me, those two tracks specifically, and Into the Mystic. A couple of those tracks in this, Brand New Day, These Dreams of You, it's more song-oriented and it's a little more accessible. I mean, as much as I like experimentation, this is one, of course, right now I'm still lacking the actual compact disc, sadly, because I think it's in the book that I have never recovered, and I don't know if I ever will, but anyway, Moondance from Van Morrison, which, you know, he's got a lot of great songs. I don't consider most of his albums fantastic as songs are. I just know for the pop hits mostly, so. Number 16, which I don't know if it's because it's a live album, you know, this version isn't the full version, but Live at Leeds from The Who. You know, it is a classic live album. You know, the original version only had like 6 songs or something like that, but my favorite parts of this are the Happy Jack, and this version doesn't have Sparks, but Happy Jack I love. This one does have a quick one while he's away. Oh, he does have Amazing Journey and Sparks. I just thought that Happy Jack and Sparks were together, but Amazing Journey, Sparks. There's a version of this where they do all of Tommy, of course. My Generation, Magic Bus, you know, I Can't Explain's a favorite early the Who song for me, but anyway, so that is at number 16, number 15, top 15. We see Yes Again, their second album, Time and a Word, the final record with Peter Banks. Astral Traveler, the title track, is always been a favorite as much as it's a pop song. I still love it. Very hippie-ish. That was like one of the first Yes songs I actually liked. Sweet Dreams, No Opportunity Necessary, No Experience Needed. Yeah, they weren't doing prog exactly. They were still doing psychedelic pop, folk, rock, but it's still pretty good. Of course, this version has Steve Howe in it. This is like the wrong, at the time that they issued it, he'd already, you know, he'd joined the band, so this is the new promo. But of course, Peter Banks was still with the band when they made Time and Where they wrote and recorded it. Number 14, the second Michael Nesmith album to show up on this list. Loose Salute, which includes Tango Amore, Listen to the Band, which is a song I know the Monkees played frequently. Conversation, Silver Moon, Hello Lady, Lady of the Valley. I mean, this is a, you know, experimental country rock, you know, kind of progressive in a lot of ways. You know, it didn't sound like your typical country music, but, you know, it wasn't just, you know, it wasn't the stuff he did even with the Monkees mostly. So, anyway, Loose Salute, the second from the first National Band album from Michael Nesmith. Number 14. Number 13, we see Eric Clapton again after Blind Faith had broken up. He formed another project with Derek and the Dominoes, another one-off project, which has, of course, Layla's, you know, Layla and other love stories. It's titled Layla, but, you know, as you can see there. Bell Bottom Blues is a go-to on this album. He did his version of Lil Wing, which is okay, not as good as Jimmy's, of course. Yeah, I mean, I remember when I bought this, I actually liked it more than I thought, but I haven't really had reason to go back to it, and again, I have some reservations about Clapton of late. You know, it's just like, all his music kind of gets lumped in, it's kind of blur between Cream, even the Yardbirds, and solo stuff, and then this, and Blind Faith. But yeah, it's a good record. I mean, I like it more than some of the records obviously below because I know it. I kind of have more like accessibility with it, but at the same time, you know, I've never been fully attached to it, unfortunately. I mean, Layla I heard a million times on classic rock radio, and I definitely prefer the original, like the standard version versus the acoustic version he did in the '90s, which everyone heard. Anyway, okay, that was number 13, the Derek and the Dominoes. Number 12, Gentle Giant's debut album. And Gentle Giant, not a band that I've ever fully, like a lot of the sort of B and C tier or whatever, prog rock bands. This album to me, though, has always come across more like Emerson, Lake and Palmer than the way that they sounded later. But I still like it. You know, I was like, oh, Gentle Giant, you got to get into it. Buy the first album, and then, you know, decent record. I mean, again, it's number 12 above a bunch of records that are pretty good, but also below records that are better. So, number 12. Number 11, don't have a copy of Let It Be, but Let It Be. Across the Universe, Get Back. Those are the two key tracks for me on that. There's some others I like on it, but I also find that was it Long Wind Winding Road? I think it pales in comparisons to all the records that preceded it, so that's kind of why I haven't always like revisited. I mean, Across the Universe is great, although I admit I like Fiona Apple's cover even more because it's super sad. Yeah, I mean Maggie May is okay. There's some songs I like on this, but I remember just it being very uneven for a Beatles album. And because it wasn't even the last thing they did. Of course, they recorded this. It was supposed to be Get Back, and then they ended up doing Abbey Road after that. So you could totally see if Let It Be had turned out what it could have been, although it would have probably ended up being what happened with Abbey Road would have been like a double album. So anyway, number 11, Let It Be. Number 10, another one I don't have, Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water, which I believe that album has The Boxer. That's their classic. That's most people consider Bridge Over. And that's I went to go see Collective Unconscious do. They did Abbey Road. They did Pet Sounds. I didn't get to see it, unfortunately. I got the recording. They also did Bridge Over Troubled Water, the full album. Cecilia is another one, but I think of it for The Boxer. Bye Bye Love. I think that, you know, it's sort of they got bigger, a little bigger in sound, and were slightly more ambitious. I think the production values are better than, you know, on Bookends and some of the other records they had before this. So, yeah, I mean, this is my favorite Simon and Garfunkel album. Not one I'm obsessed with. The title track is great too, but it's still folk rock or, you know, mostly folk music. But they did a little more with it. So anyway, that's number 10. Number 9, I had it on cassette tape, and I still can't find it. Of course, I don't have it right here. Paranoid from Black Sabbath, which of course has Iron Man in the title track. It has a couple others though. I'm not saying I'm just again my Black Sabbath history, but I had it on War Pigs. That's the obvious other one. But there's a couple of deeper tracks when I used to listen to this album. Planet Caravan, Electric Funeral, and that's why it finishes higher. And Fairies Wear Boots. So yeah, Paranoid's I should get it on vinyl. You don't see Black Sabbath vinyl that much. It's probably, you know, cost you an arm or leg. It's a big step up from the debut album, the self-titled debut album, which came out obviously just a few months before that. So at number 9, number 8, another album I don't have a physical copy, Deep Purple's In Rock, which most well known probably for Child in Time and Speed King. Child in Time is prog. I mean, it's blue. It's hard rock, psychedelic rock, but I think it's their most, in some ways, that song specifically is one of their most proggy, if they're not their most proggy song they ever did. But I haven't really, like, I probably only listened to the album maybe about half a dozen times, you know, because I don't own it, you know, I just like streamed it here and there. But I know by reputation, people like praise this record and think it's maybe their finest work, the Mark II lineup especially. So anyway, number 8, Deep Purple and Rock. Number 7, now we're getting to the real nitty-gritty, the meat of the whole list. Emerson, Lake and Palmer's debut album, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, which includes, of course, the Lucky Man, which was a song that made radio, the Moogs solo at the end, Tank, let's see, The Barbarian, Knife Edge. It's a great debut album. ELP, for a while there, they had a run a little bit like like Zeppelin or Renaissance, where they were pretty consistent. I have my favorites, but I don't find their their number of records they released at the beginning of their career to be that different. So number 7, number 6, Deja Vu from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. After they released the Crosby, Stills and Nash album the year before, which I believe this has Carry On. Like pull this up and everything. I've talked about this when I went through the vinyl. I mean, they were a super group, so this was really kind of like an experiment. Not experiment. Teach Your Children was on this. They didn't, and Woodstock, as I mentioned, Our House. I guess it's slightly more consistent, you could say, than the Crosby, Stills and Nash album, but there's a few others on this record that I remember just thinking, wow, this is one of the most perfect records from a band that didn't last. Why didn't they last? Carry On. Almost cut my hair. It's very hippie-ish. It's a double. Yeah. It's got this, it's got that suite, the Country Girl suite, which is like it's only 5 minutes, but it's got 3 different movements. So, I mean, they were really they were very, like, progressive folk. I mean, you could, like, take Tull or even Simon and Garfunkel to some smaller degree. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young were they were doing those multi-part harmonies. Of course, they got so well known for the members' previous bands. I'll just worry about this later. So moving on, that's at number 6. So number 5, the big top 5 here. We see Led Zeppelin again. I have one of the, I don't know if it's the first pressing, but the vinyl that has the little thing that you could move around and see all the different photos. Led Zeppelin 3, Out on the Tiles, Immigrant Song, of course, 2 heaviest songs. Tangerine, That's the Way. Let me just jog my memory about the whole time. I mean, I like to pride myself to knowing the entire Zeppelin track list for most of their records. Friends, Celebration Day, Since I've Been Loving You is another highlight. Gallows Pole, Brownie or Stomp. I really don't dislike any songs on here. I mean, do the thing. I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to do. Oh, you have to do it like this. Yeah, of course. Yeah, there it is. Zeppelin 3. Yeah, I mean, my favorites are probably the heavier tracks, but I don't know. Since I've Been Loving You, I really have a soft spot for when Zeppelin does blues songs really well. Of course, that was probably another song they borrowed, that they paid money from since. But anyway. Number 4, we see King Crimson again. Second time on this list. In the Wake of Poseidon, which has Cat Food. The final album with Greg Lake. Corton, what is it? Corton, Pictures of a City, of course, is on this record. Cadence and Cascade. That's the song I'm thinking of. The Devil's Triangle. I honestly have felt like this record... I in some ways prefer listening to it more often than In the Court of the Crimson King, because I just feel like it's more raw and more honest. Even though some people say, well, it's just like they're making this In the Court Part 2, even though you had members leave, Michael Giles and Ian McDonald weren't on it. But I think this album, Crimson's a band that I like to hear deep tracks from, and I get more out of it in that sense. So, yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite King Crimson album, The Wake of Poseidon, but sometimes I feel like the album that needs more attention and needs more appreciation than any other record that they did. Alright, so number 3, Soft Machine's Third. I love this album for the ambition. Of course, it's the 4 pieces that are like 18 to 20 minutes long. Moon in June is the most well-known one. It's very trippy, some of it's sort of free jazz, but I don't get too bored with it. And there's a lot of like psychedelic moments that remind me of like the early Syd Barrett, Pink Floyd, and it's to me the only record from Soft Machine I've fully really got into is the truth. But I also really got into it. It was compared to Godspeed You Black Emperor's Lift Up Your Singing Fist Like It Tends to Heaven, and the comparison does make some sense. Sort of the scope and the structure, and 4 different kind of pieces that are not identical, but they all sort of work in a flowing way. Anyway, so. Number 3, that was number 3. Number 2, Trespass. Of course, I've got the artwork here. the second Genesis album, of course, with Anthony Phillips, John Mayhew as the drummer. I absolutely love Stagnation. Stagnation's an all-time favorite of mine. Love White Mountain. The Knife, of course, most people think of this album most first and foremost from Visions of Angels. You know, it's not my favorite Genesis album, but sometimes Looking for Someone, that's the track on. Dusk is maybe the weakest track on here, but it's just so like warm and ethereal and sort of almost cinematic in a lot of ways. Almost biblical. I've talked about that. I always think of sort of like some sort of story from, biblical times. It was like a fable. Parts of it, especially with the artwork. I'll have to worry about this later. So, and we get to the big number one. People might think this is sacrilege, but yes, Atom Heart Mother from Pink Floyd. I've said my piece on this many times. It's not my favorite Pink Floyd record, but it's a damn close second. And the Atom Heart Suite is unbelievable. Summer of '68 is an absolute total banger. The trumpets just totally work. I love Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast. If is fine. It's pretty nice. It's such a soothing, calming, atmospheric record. I know the band members and a lot of fans think it's either uneven or it's annoying. It's early Floyd. They weren't finding what they were doing. I argue that no. And everything works for me on this record. It was over time. When I first heard it, I didn't love it. But Fat Old Son's the other one I'm not thinking of. I remember that from the original bootlegs I got from this guy. But yeah, Atom Heart Mother wins my 1970 Album of the Year. So, what are your albums of the year from 1970? I'm sure Death by Unicorn will give me. Well, he already posted his, so I kind of know it. Surprises. I'd love to see that. Please give it a like, leave a comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.